Hello and welcome to AEF TV in association with Engerati. I'm now joined by Monique, Koning from the European Investment Bank, or EIB for short, much easier. Monique, welcome.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to be here. And you know, we did an interview last year, and I think it'd be nice to follow on the narrative from that interview, just for you to give a little bit of update about you know, the EIB's activity within Africa and what you're seeing on the ground.
Yes, thank you very much. Since last year, I have to say that there has been, I think we are looking at more and more projects in Africa in the energy space, both on the public sector side, but definitely also on the private side. The PPPs or PF projects that I support in Sub-Saharan Africa and as well as in Northern Africa. Many countries are now really building out their renewable space and have programs for renewables, feed-in tariffs for renewables, and that generates, of course, a lot of opportunities for new investments.
So how many projects are you actually actively investing in at the moment?
Oh, we are looking at probably something like 15 projects.
Right.
Last year, the deal that we closed last year was really a flagship project, was Lake Turkana wind project, a 300 megawatt wind farm in which the EIB is the biggest lender. We also there provided a 25 million preferred equity to close an equity gap. And so I think we played a very important role in actually making this deal happen. So we're looking at the larger projects. We are looking, of course, a lot is happening in Ghana with the gas coming on very soon.
The gas and the power ships and God knows what else.
Yes, so there is a lot of activity there. Nigeria, of course, there's a lot of activity in the IPP business. Ethiopia is also starting its IPP program, so geothermal would be something really to look out for in Ethiopia as well as in Kenya. But in Kenya, of course, you know, we have done, EIB has supported geothermal all along, and we will continue to do that.
So in terms of scale, where that flagship project from last year, now you're saying, okay, we're now looking at 15 projects. You know, in terms of the scale of what you're looking at, you know, if you were to put a percentage increase on it, you know, how much bigger is it getting, and how much, and what is your sense on, you know, the bankability of some of these things that are coming on stream?
Yes, I think for the larger projects that also get a lot of help from the World Bank and IFC and the EIB upstream. We have a special upstream program, for instance, for the Middle East and the Mediterranean countries, and we're helping them upstream also with developing the PPPs. For those projects, I think we can be satisfied that they are bankable. These are large projects, governments need to make them bankable, and they will need the power. So we're working very closely with governments to make these projects bankable. What we also see more and more is a lot of smaller projects, right? It's like the 5 megawatt, the 10 megawatt, and that is actually the key question that I come also out with from these meetings, AEF here in Dubai, is how are we going to be able to finance those smaller projects?
Well, it is one of those questions I was going to ask you, you know, because it is again a popular narrative that has come through. You know, the technology providers are in some cases making direct contracts with communities, and there's innovative billing solutions, so that may solve some of them. But I think there's a project size in the middle. There's a gap there where you can't just rely on that, and they will be looking for funding.
Yes.
So again, you know, hypothetically speaking, you know, what would you think are some of the potential solutions to that can be put into the DNA of those projects that make them of interest?
Yes, well, that's a very good question. In fact, I think one of the solutions could be where governments, for instance, have a feed-in tariff program, and they would like to bid out a lot of smaller projects. What we should do is try to bundle these projects, right? One of the key challenges of these projects is the transaction costs, because we still need our external advisors, our law firms. We have the intercreditor issues when there are more lenders, and we don't finance more than 50% of any project. But if we bundle them, and we can actually streamline our due diligence, and that would already, I think, come a long way into helping these projects. If I get I often am approached by small developers, and they have excellent ideas, they have the equity, and then they come to us, and I almost caution them. Are you sure you want to engage with the EIB? Because I am going to put a large process, a large due diligence on you,
and a lot of costs.
And a lot of costs.
Yeah.
So that's a way to bundle the projects. That would be one way, in my view, to try to.
So what you're saying that the current institutional mechanics, just that approach alone, then tips the balance of the project by having those transactional costs applied to it into a negative rather than a positive.
Yes, and standardization. I think that's also, if you can bundle projects, you can standardize the PPA, you can standardize the project documentation. You have one project documentation that applies everywhere, and I think that's something that's happening currently in Egypt, where the government is actually doing a feed-in tariff program where one tries to standardize the PPA. It will depend a little bit, still variations depending on sector, but that is one, I think, would be a very big advantage, because that reduces enormously the time and the cost spent on due diligence.
And when you then look at that, and again, let me take a hypothetical scenario that you have these projects bundled, and let's try and flesh this out a little bit. How important would it be to someone like you to have the same actors involved in each of the projects?
Yeah, that's easier. If I have one developer that actually is involved in several of the smaller operations, that makes it easier.
But is it critical?
No, it's not critical, but it makes it still easier. The more you can do, because then I do one due diligence on one developer, and I can then finance a whole. A lot of projects. I think in Sub-Saharan Africa, of course, the challenge with these smaller projects is you have a one-off in one country. Yeah. A 10 megawatts PV in Rwanda, then another 10 megawatt in Rwanda, and then the next one maybe in Burundi, the next one maybe in Chad. And that, I think we need to find a way, maybe even to set up a vehicle that can wholesale that into these smaller projects, right? So that we can delegate it and put it outside of the EIB, and create vehicles that can take care of these smaller projects in a better, more effective way.
Particularly on the renewables side, the costs are coming down, particularly in solar. The generation capability is also going up, so the pound or the dollar per generation is looking very, very attractive, and and those are things that are immensely replicable, right? You can say, right, okay, it's a 100 square meter site, and we can put that anywhere.
Yes, that's true, but you still, if they are in different locations, you still have to look at the environmental and social impacts of the project. Different promoters, you have to look at the different promoters. So it still makes it, that makes it, I think that's the challenge, to bundle the projects, right? If every project is so unique, normally it applies to a large project, it applies to a small project as well. And so we have to make sure that for every project, our requirements, eligibility requirements, but also our safeguard requirements and other credit requirements, everything has to be fulfilled for every single project. Yeah. I think if you can, and I have been talking at the AEF now with several people who have actually very good ideas, maybe to create vehicles and to try to, to put a vehicle in place that can actually more effectively and more quickly address these various requirements.
So this vehicle would act as the single developer, effectively, that we're talking
or
about.
the single provider of debt. We put debt into a vehicle, and then that management of that debt facility will then provide the debt. You can even also add, a technical assistance facility where you actually help the projects to come to fruition. Maybe. A level of concessional or grant money can also be deployed with projects that meet the required criteria, so that you bring down further
and the community benefit side of things as well. So, let's drill down to another level where, where has all this conversation come from? Conversation comes from, people sat in this chair and stories in the press where either companies or communities are taking matters into their own hands because they're kind of tired of waiting for the grid to arrive, right? Or sometimes the grid will never arrive, you know, so they're having to do that. And there seems to be now a feeling where people are saying that actually this distributed energy framework is the one that will accelerate power into Africa more than what we've been doing up until now. Would you agree with that?
No, I don't think so. Not necessarily. I think the large projects are necessary. Okay, Africa needs to have, you know, large projects, and they need to bring a lot of power into the market. They need to be able to do that at once. However, I think you can. I fully also understand, because, you know, the communities that are not connected to the grid and that are far away from being connected to the grid, that is a real issue, and they should not also have to wait eventually to be connected to the grid. It has to work. I think it has to work. So I'm not saying you have to now choose for all these off-grid solutions because, you know, it takes too long. No, I think governments will have to develop power and, you know, have to develop large projects. I don't think there is an alternative. Having said that, I think the smaller projects, like the off-grid projects or the captive projects, also need to have a chance. And I think we need to focus on both, actually. You cannot only focus on the large, you cannot only focus on the 5 to 10 megawatt that are still grid connected, that are already presenting a chance, but you also need to look at the off-grid. And this is where the European Commission also is now developing a program. It's called Electrify. So it's trying to really help with kind of, I won't say grant funding, but softer money to try to create bankable projects in the off-grid space, right? In the rural communities and other off-grid space, to really try to find solutions.
Projects that impact communities. And
those are projects that impact especially rural communities. And as you know, Africa has a lot of small communities. It's very spread out. And so you have to kind of find a way, and Electrify will do that. It will bring money and bring together governments, communities with the private sector to see how you can create bankable projects, you know, in these communities off-grid.
So that goes back to what you were saying earlier. So we almost need maybe not even a dual strategy. We need a triple strategy.
You need a multiple,
all
absolutely. You cannot you cannot only do the large ones. You cannot only do the medium size. You have to do everything, including the small off-grid, because they're potentially very good solutions in off-grid as well, and that are bankable and affordable. You see, it's also bringing affordable energy to the villages, and I think that is definitely within the possibilities, and that is something that the EIB is now starting to look at. You know, we are famous for supporting, you know, the larger projects, but now we also definitely.
You are also trying to look down the stack and say, well, actually, what do
yes, I think we have to be innovative, and we will be also working very closely with our European counterparts, KfW or AFD or FMO, DEG, Poparco. You know, we will look together for solutions in the off-grid space.
Excellent. Well, on that note, I think we'll finish there, because that seems like a natural end to this interview. Monique, thanks again for joining us. Thank you very much. Insightful as ever. And this has been another interview at AEF, so AEF TV in association with Engerati. Thanks for watching.